Hello, all you positive heads out there. It's so good to be back with all you beautiful reflections of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. If you're new to this podcast, of course, we are super happy to have you here, and we just ask that you bring an open mind and heart to your listening experience and to be prepared to explore vantage points that I'm convinced will help shift or solidify your current understanding of the ultimate nature of reality in a way that is extremely empowering. Speaking of exploring powerful perspectives, I'm super excited to announce the release of my very first book, The Golden Key: Modern Alchemy to Unlock Infinite Abundance. If you're ready to alchemize the circumstances in your life so that your abundance expands to an entirely new level in 2021, head over to goldenkey.gift to download the audio or ebook as my gift to you by using the code POSITIVEHEAD. All right, all you positive heads, on this week's Soul Share episode, I'm very excited to have my brother from another alien, Michael Phillip, back here with me on the show. Michael is the host of the long-running stellar Third Eye Drops podcast and was originally on Positive Head way back on episode 479 back in 2017, many, many moons ago. And I'm looking forward to catching up with him today after all these years. Yo, Michael, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Hey, man, thank you. Very excited to be back as well. You are one of my favorite people to wonder dip with. I love your positive disposition and your ability to extract wonder from all phenomenon in the world. So I have no doubt that this is going to be a fun one.
It's inevitable. Thank you for that. Yeah, it's really cool. There's, a few people, you being one of them, who, I think our journey probably began close to the same time. When did you launch Third Eye Drops?
Oh man, I'm so bad with time. It just kind of evaporates, especially with the last year of time being like,
yeah.
You're gonna tell me that time isn't relative. You're gonna tell me that time isn't elastic after the last year. But I think it has. I think it's been about 4 years. 4 years or so.
Yeah, and I'm at 5. So yeah, I knew it was pretty close to the same amount of time. So, well, here's what I'd like to do. I probably asked you this all those years ago, and I think it's fun when I have someone back on to see if I have a very cliche opening question and closing question, and it's always fun for me to see if it changes, if there's been years that have passed. So, and my guess is if we did do this back then, you probably don't remember what you said. So the question is this: you're in an elevator, the woman next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" You have 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
Man, I think that's it. That in and of itself is probably enough to last a lot more than 10 floors, not because I have any specific answer, but I think diving into the meaning of what passion is and the larger context of how you even find that passion is as important of a question as what your passion is. Because like one of the things, I'm grappling with writing about right now is how to shift people's answer to a question like that from something that is kind of nutshelled and an elevator type of answer to something they're like feeling, to something that is a felt, palpable sense of meaning, of passion in their life. And I think a lot of times great questions are better than final answers on that. Like questions that compel you to want to keep going and not feel like you've settled, that open-endedness, that continuous searching. I mean, in a lot of ways that has become a really core part of my own philosophy. And I'm definitely riding on the shoulders of people like Robert Anton Wilson and Terrence McKenna, and people who are like we're always interested in doing more, diving further, reading the next thing, having the next conversation. So I almost feel like for me, it's what's that next thing? What's
Hmm.
that next wonder dip? What's that next mystery I wanna, you know, smear all over my mind.
Right, right. That's such a Michael Phillip answer. And you even touched on my cliche. You touched briefly on my cliche ending question. So, of course, you jumped ahead in some way, shape, or form. Well, fair enough. You're the eternal explorer. And why don't you do this, if you would?
Yeah.
For those who, there's obviously a lot of new listeners since 2017. So maybe you could give a little of your backstory and how you ended up on this, this path that you're on, and just whatever feels relevant to share.
Sure, sure. Well, I think a lot of people listening to a show like this can probably relate to feeling like they had a listless childhood where maybe things weren't making sense. The well-traveled past path was really unsatisfying. The sort of daily doldrums are sort of hitting your soul with an uninspiring plop. And it's just like this school, this place, maybe these people, maybe this church, maybe this whatever is just not it. I don't know what is it, but I know it's not this.
Yeah.
And I think over time, that feeling of those existential wriggles just got intense enough that I needed to figure out a verb for that. Because there is, I don't know if there really is a thing that you are supposed to do. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
there is. But for me, it was like, I got to do something. I got to do something. And I found myself really gravitating toward having these, kind of deep diving conversations anyway. And around that time, other podcasts doing these kinds of conversations started to penetrate my awareness. And I thought to myself, oh, you can just
Hmm.
goof around, but also explore the mystery and majesty of the multiverse. Like somebody like Duncan Trussell or something was
Mm-hmm.
one of my
Mm-hmm.
first big inspirations.
Yeah.
And from there, it's just like, oh, you can just do that. Like you don't have to be anybody special. You don't
Right.
have to have a PhD. You don't have to have a million followers. You could just sit down and do it. And for me, that's what felt genuine. So
Yeah.
so I just kept going with that.
I so relate to that. It's, one of the coolest things about podcasting, I think you would agree, is you get this opportunity to share what's really in your heart and mind, and explore all these topics. And
Mhm.
what's great is, yes, there's so much digital noise out there. There's so many things vying for your attention,
Yeah.
and that which is like unto itself is drawn. People who really resonate with the unique, vibrational offering that is Michael Phillip are going to find their way in some way to what you're doing. And it's just really cool to see how those who are, drawn to, your uniqueness, find their way, and it just keeps you going and wanting to continue the conversation, and it expands, and there's more people, and so that's what I've loved about podcasting. Same with me. I'd never done any kind of broadcasting, or it's just
Right.
like, I love to talk about this stuff. Oh, let's turn on the microphone, and it's wild to think that this is a new potential for the world, because to think it never existed is like, people are so limited in their way to get their voice, heard, and it sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I love, I mean, there's definitely something to be said for real expertise. I don't want to make it
Sure.
seem like
Sure.
anybody can just get behind the
Yep.
microphone. They can, and there is at the same time something to be said for expertise, and that's what's another really fabulous thing about podcasting is like you and I are enthusiasts of many things. We're dipping in and out of many little portals, and what's great is we can synthesize experts. We can synthesize all of the things we're interested in and bring them an expert to deepen wonder. And we can do it in a new way every single week. Like last week, maybe this is someone you've had on the show too, but last week I had Dr. Bruce Grayson on the podcast, who's a
No.
psychiatrist and one of the world's like leading near death experience researchers.
Ooh, yeah.
So
I love
it's
that
like
topic
you can do
too.
that one week, and then you can have of course. And it's like you can have a physicist the next week, then you can have a shaman the next week, then you can have a psychologist to talk about Jungian theory the next week, and you can just it's I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a selfish element to it, because it gives me the ability to have these conversations too. And
Yeah.
I'm sure you feel the same way.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we get to meet so many amazing people. And yeah, I mean, you're right. Anyone can do it. And what's great is if it's something that I think is you're sort of cut out for, like we can all shoot a basket, but not everyone's going to be LeBron James, right? Then
Exactly.
your skills develop, and I think the cream rises to the top. And like any discipline, if it's really a path that's meant for someone and they're particularly good at it, then it's a lot of fun. It's really, really cool. I'd love to jump right in the deep end with you on, I know you are excited about, and I think I'd seen you post about this recently too. You just went to Peru, right?
Yeah, man. So it actually has been a little over a year, but fresh for you and I. And
Oh, really? I feel like I just saw you
Yeah,
post about it, and maybe it's this time illusion thing.
Yeah, it could have been the anniversary or something, because I did make a post, but
okay.
it's a tale, man. It's a tale. And I don't want to skip over the beginning, because it has probably the most potent wonder whisker perking up synchronicity I've ever experienced in my entire life.
Wow.
So I don't want to leave that bit out, but
yes,
so,
please never leave a synchronicity out when you're on this show.
Yeah. And I'll admit, man, over the years, my bar for synchronicities has gotten higher, because there was a time where I was kind of manic about it, and I got excited about all the kind of little daily things that I think everybody gets excited about when they first hear about the concept.
Yep.
But over the years, I wouldn't say I'm jaded, but I would say I'm kind of like, come on, I gotta have something really greasy, So, my good friend and I, Colin, are traveling in parallel. Colin Francescetto, great artist and musician, been on my podcast a number of times, plays in an awesome, legendary indie band called Circa Survive. But anyway, so he and I are both going together. We're both pretty nervous. He's coming from Portland. I'm coming from Chicago. So I get to O'Hare. I'm supposed to get on my connecting flight to Lima, and people are boarding the plane, and I'm just sitting there waiting for my group to get called. And then the most dreaded announcement happens. This flight has been canceled. Please proceed to customer service to,
oh man.
figure out your route. Yeah. And then, I start doing the math of, okay, if I miss this, there's only 2 flights into Iquitos a day, which is the final destination. And if I miss that, I can't get on the bus to the retreat. I have to figure out some way to like hire a car into the rainforest with basically zero Spanish knowledge. It's just not good.
Yeah.
So, I run to customer service, try to beat everybody. And I get there, and the woman is trying to help me for at least an hour. And
wow.
She's like, I'm sorry, there's no way I can get you out tonight. There's inclement weather at all the connections. So you're just going to have to stay overnight. And then because it's weather related, you got to pay for the hotel too. So it's just like insult to injury.
Right.
And so I'm freaking out a little bit, and I'm just like, grumbling, like, whatever, this hotel looks nice, I'll go there, it's really close by. So I go there, I start texting Colin, and I'm like, hey man, bad news, tell him the story. And we're texting on and off, he's on flights, I'm in transit. And he sends me, I get to the hotel, I sit down at the bar, order some food, and he sends me this barrage of weird messages like, you know, when you told me that you missed your flight, I started doing this visualization exercise that Sarah gave me. Sarah's his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a calming visualization exercise where basically you close your eyes and you imagine yourself laying down in a field with roses blooming around you. So I do that, and he says, and I'm feeling pretty good. And then I open my eyes, and there's this guy in front of me, like two people in front of me, with with roses all over his bag,
Whoa.
with roses all over his jacket, with roses tattooed on his neck and his head.
Whoa.
And he says, so at that moment, I laughed to myself and I knew everything was going to be okay. And then I'm looking down, I kid you not, at the menu of this hotel that I'm staying at. The hotel is called the Rose Hotel.
Oh my God.
The hotel is called the Rose Hotel. So this is one of those moments where just it's like everything is recalibrated, like everything in your body is just like, how can this be happening?
Right.
How can this be happening? So that's how the trip started.
Wow.
And so from there, travel wise, at least, everything went much smoother, and I was able to get out the next morning. I was able to get to Iquitos kind of just in time, and meet up with him and get on that bus to the rainforest.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So did you find yourself, upon seeing all the rose, the very nondiscreet rose messages, flying at you? Did it really help you to sink into sort of a surrendered state to the cancellation and the process and everything?
Yeah, I mean, it was hard not to. It was hard not to feel like there's some kind of a wink going on. I
Yeah.
don't know what if anything this means, but
Mm-hmm.
it certainly feels like there is some kind of heightened meaning going on. I've since learned this word. Have you ever heard the word kairos before?
I feel like I have, but I don't know I couldn't tell you what it is.
So it's this concept the Greeks had of, most people are familiar with chronological time, chronos, cause
Right.
and effect. This
Mm-hmm.
happens, then this happens. But they had another concept of time as well called kairos. And kairos is are times of basically increased meaning or increased opportunity.
Mm.
And, a lot of times it's thought of as like, revolutionary times or maybe transformative technologies or big movements or something like that.
Mm.
But sometimes I think of maybe moments like this where everything feels hyper real and hyper consequential. Maybe you've somehow found yourself in a personal little kairos pocket or something. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, it makes me think of the Mayans sort of looking at time in, as non-linear, and it's a cyclical kind of thing that happens. And um, I've definitely found myself in those pockets, and they definitely feel more, things just feel more intense to go along with it. It's like, oh, what's going on? This is a like crazy feedback loop in some
Yeah.
way, reflecting me back to me. And so, yeah, that's quite
Yeah.
the way to start the journey. And I don't think you said, did we say at the beginning, we said Peru. Did we mention that you were going it was an ayahuasca adventure, right?
Yes. Actually, it was one of those. See, and I feel like too, and I don't know. I mean, this could totally just be me, reaching for meaning, of course, but it does feel like those moments of increased suchness or muchness or somethingness or meaning, they seem to occur when you go off the beaten path more. Like
Absolutely.
when you're willing to go into a sort of surrendered, I don't know what I'm doing state, it feels like it's more likely that those things may strike. But that's
Yeah.
completely.
As a fellow psychonaut, I'm sure you would agree. Like, when you're going into something where you're using a plant medicine or something like that, the amount of things that I've had happen while even in the midst of, a journey, a medicine journey or psychedelic journey or what have you. It's like, and of course, makes it really easy for people to attribute it to like, well, you were on yada, yada, yada. But it truly does. It's like you were setting out on this, this epic adventure. Speaking of stepping out of time, right? You're going to do ayahuasca and it's like it instantly shifts the field or something around you, where all of a sudden there's so much more, almost like for me, like at transformational festivals, I've had so many like incredible next level, experiences. And it's like, I think it's because I'm stepping into a container. Sometimes there are those substances involved, sometimes not, but you have all these people in a super heightened state, open-hearted state, stepping completely outside of, think of something like Burning Man or whatever, completely outside of the normal, city and the way we conduct a life. And it just seems to open up a container for so much more to come through that is, also out of the ordinary, I guess you would say.
And I think too, again, that unspoken context, like I was trying to communicate earlier, there's this, you don't need to talk to everyone at an ayahuasca retreat or a transformational festival to understand that we're all here for something. We're all here for change, to better ourselves, to experience something beyond the normal, to be open-hearted, open-minded. And I think when there's that unspoken backdrop, what a difference. What a palpable unsaid difference between that and like going to your cubicle or something. You know what I'm saying?
Totally. Yeah. It's a very different kind of common denominator and theme to relate to someone on that. And then it's the, it's like, where there are one or more gathered, it creates this, amplification of the whole experience, I believe.
I agree. Yeah. There's definitely something to that sangha, that seeker community coming together that cannot be achieved on your own. I completely agree. I completely agree. So from there, I mean, everything happens pretty quickly because you arrive at the retreat and you're drinking that night. You're drinking that night.
Wow.
So it's like you have lunch. you get to know everybody, and they're like, we'll see you in the Maloka, the place, this structure, this central structure where we gather. We'll see you there at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. or whatever it was. And we're throwing down. So it's like,
right in the deep end of the pool.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like you're meeting all these people, beautiful, wide ranging crew of, I think it was 20 something people, young, old, from multiple continents, there for different reasons, as you come to find out throughout the process. And it's fabulous. It's really fabulous.
Wow.
And then so that night, I'm not going to bullshit you at all. It was harrowing. It felt demonic. It felt, I feel like I was mentally prepared as much as I could have been. I feel
was it
like
your
I
first
was
time
doing ayahuasca. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But man, it just, so, the way my friend Colin and I were situated, they're doling out the doses in a sort of circular way. So there's two shamans. There's Hamilton Souther and Don Alberto, and it's sort of like you are split into two, and you just kind of go sequentially. So we just happen to be kind of toward the back. So we're two of the last people to drink. And, for anyone who hasn't tried it, that has heard the stories, yes, it does not taste good. It's very, very earthy, very bitter, very thick, very, maybe not chunky,
bad licorice.
But viscous, very viscous.
Yes.
So, you gulp it down, and you're just kind of settling in, knowing that some kind of a freight train is about to just take over your mind, body, and soul. And about 20 minutes after I drink, I start, hearing the telltale noises of, you know, uh, shall we say, gastric discomfort and gagging, and and the music, the icaros are starting to get more and more intense, and I'm just breathing. I'm trying to like literally just do the Vipassana, like mindfulness meditation, like just stay with the breath, stay with the breath. And then I start hearing people around me. It's just the energy is rising and rising and rising in the room. And I'm thinking to myself, I just got to stay with the breath, just stay with the breath. And then it's 30 minutes in, I think I'm okay. And then I realize, oh yeah, I'm the last person in this room to drink. So I'm like 20 or 30. Yeah, you're right. Exactly. And then I get to this point, man, where I feel the dam of any semblance of control about to give out. And I'm lying to myself. Like, this is going to be the peak. I can just stay right here. And that was like 2 out of 10 of where I was going.
Right.
So so it gets uncomfortable. Then it gets to the purging, the vomiting, and then it's to this whole point of just I can't maintain my cool whatsoever. I can't even stay where I'm supposed to stay. I'm asking people for help. I don't even know what I'm doing, but I now recall this, of course. I'm asking for help. I'm kind of just bargaining with myself and the people there, like for somehow to alleviate what I'm going through. And of course, no one can alleviate it. Nothing does alleviate it. And I don't want to dwell on the negativity, but I think it's so important for the totality of the story that I felt truly awful, man. Like truly rock bottom awful, to the point where if you have any kind of self-awareness or any kind of social niceties that have endured, you're going to kind of care about how you come off to strangers. You're going to kind of care about not being a burden to people or whatever. I'm just asking a guy I don't even know, like, what can you do for me, please, please? And he's like, I can take you to a shower and try to help you calm down. So I'm like, I'm stripping down, in front of this stranger in a shower with nothing but underwear on. And man, I mean, truly, it's even worse than what I'm telling you. And my pride is like preventing me from going even further, because I mean, I was at like the most pathetic rock bottom point I think I've ever been in public in front of people, just blubbering like a child and just completely melted away into a pathetic heap of humanity. And I was just in survival mode that whole first night, just trying to survive. And finally, after 2, 3, 4 hours, whatever it was, of and I mean, I haven't even gotten into the sort of, the psychical torment, where the visuals were not like, if you've taken mushrooms or you've had an LSD trip, and you've got this sort of quintessential tryptamine visuals. This was like that, but it felt like it was a chaotic doom version that was just going so fast and spiraling so out of control that it just felt like it just literally felt like you were falling into a void of mischief and torture, and like almost feeling like the demons are like laughing at you and poking you, and it's like, oh, look at this idiot coming in here thinking he's gonna have a little adventure. Let's completely eviscerate his soul. Like, I mean, that's what that first night felt like. And but that
it stayed that way the whole night. Like there was no redemption.
Not on night one. Not on night one. It was just torture, survival, and then coming out the other end but weirdly, the coming out the other end, this was like a hint of the sort of grand lesson of the whole experience for me. The coming out the other end into what was supposedly normal, into what is supposedly baseline consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
it felt like what it must feel like to be lost in a desert and come to um an oasis or something, man. Just
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
that gratitude for, this is what I've been taking for granted this whole time.
Right.
And the ability to laugh with everybody else who was in there. Who was it? Like it was like a perfect example. Somebody that first night was just cursing out the shamans. She completely lost it and was just like hurling profanity at the shamans, at everyone in the room. And of course that led to this sort of psychic hand grenade experience of night one at the time. But in hindsight, it was hilarious. And we're
Mm-hmm.
all
Right.
and the shamans are laughing, we're laughing. So that coming out the other side was my first true big lesson of that whole trip.
Yeah. Wow. That's that is pretty intense. I don't know if I've done it 6 times, and I've had some pretty intense like dealing with fears.
Mhm.
Your description might sound worse, although you're pretty good at telling the tale. So it's it's definitely not for the faint of heart, and especially because you're going in and you just don't know what you're going to get. I think of my friend
Mhm.
John, who went his first Aya journey, and it was just as pleasant and joyful and playful. And I'm just thinking, what? That didn't happen to my first time. I think it was kind of a
Mhm.
mix, but I had some parts that were like dealing with. For me, it's always been a lot of fears coming up and having to process them. Well, for the first many journeys, it was like running from them. Oh, how do
Mhm.
avoidance? How do I get out? How do I get up and move around and talk or whatever? And then the last time that I did it, which has been a couple of years ago now, was I just like stayed with it and just accepted every dark thing, every fear, and thanked it as it came in. And it was like, by the next morning, it's like I looked like I'd been in a battle because I thrashed so much the whole night, like kicking things around me, and like it was intense. So
Yes.
that's the thing, is you just don't know so what you're gonna get. So how many nights were you? Is this are you going to be taking Aya? Is it?
So it's 5
Oh my
sessions.
goodness!
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, 5 in a row.
Not 5 in a row. There's
Okay,
one. So they do 3 on the front end, a break, and then 2. And I think they have to do it that way because the way that these tryptamines work primarily on the serotonin receptors,
uh huh.
and there is a certain amount of I forget the actual terminology for it, but you can't just keep taking tryptamines. Like there's a really big um there's a resistance that develops basically. So you have
Right.
to take hugely escalating amounts to get the same effect. So you have to have a break at some point for that kind of synaptic reset to
Gotcha.
occur.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, I mean, I could tell the extremely long version of the story, but I'll make it a little bit more bite-sized and try to focus a little bit on the jewels slash doldrums. And night 2, I had a talk with everybody, and I'm leaving so much out about how just fabulous all the people were, and
Sure.
just people there to overcome awful traumas and being so open-hearted and sharing terrible things, and just all of us trying to share everybody's burden together. And it really did create just such a beautiful, loving atmosphere. And the great thing about just a harrowing experience like night 1 is, like, you're immediately best friends with everybody. You can't be
Right. You've been in the
you can't
it's like being in the
yeah.
trenches in World War II. Like you're bonded.
Absolutely, absolutely. So there's that. And I don't want to miss that, because I think that in and of itself is a huge reason to do something like this.
Mm-hmm.
So night 2, I'm advised by the shaman, like, you're clearly sensitive. You don't take that much tomorrow night. Don't let anybody get in your head about doses or whatever. Like, take a little bit less, stay close to the Ikaros, stay close to the shamans. That's my advice for night 2.
Mm-hmm.
So night 2 comes, same thing, man. Just terrible. Just
Oh,
awful. I'm right back in the pit of despair. Like,
oh
why?
no.
Why?
Oh
Why?
no.
But in the last hour or so, I go sit right up in front of them, and I'm just like, I'm gonna get into this. I'm gonna get into this. I'm gonna move my body to the beat. I'm gonna, and I hit that sweet spot for like 20, 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And this feeling of almost like my my soul was just at a concert or something, like just I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I wasn't there, but there was some part of my being that was there, being like worked on and healed. I was starting to get that feeling, but just a taste of it. So night 3, then I'm like, I think I got this dialed in. I think I understand what I need to do. So I immediately go up to the front. I do the same dose as the night before. Same thing, just again fall
Oh
flat on
no.
my face.
Oh
I'm like,
no.
and I don't want to make it sound like I had a terrible overall experience, but in the moment it was so terrible. I
Right.
can't, I really truly can't convey the horror. And just it's one of those things that even intellectually I know I experienced, but I don't even know. Like in the same way that a dream becomes, or
Yeah.
a trip of any kind becomes sort of a story.
Yeah.
I, I've lost my grip, thankfully, on how bad it was. But
Wow.
on the third night, eventually, I did get back to that place, and I did truly feel like I broke through to like something broke through, like an
Mm-hmm.
intelligence broke through. And it was almost like a moment of sitting down with like a teacher, or sitting down with a higher self, or your genius, your guardian angel, your daemon, whatever terminology you want to use. And it
Yeah.
was very much a moment like, okay, we're here. What, how can I help you?
Yeah.
Like that
Right.
kind of a thing. But
Wow.
there was an air to it of like, yeah, man, whatever you want. Like, this is just your whole life, all these things you're worried about, all these fears, you're making them so much bigger than they really are. Like, you said you dealt with a lot of fears, and I imagine maybe some of that was around mortality.
Mm.
Um, it was for me, at least.
Yeah,
And
yeah, and sort of bad things happening to people that I love, or
yeah,
myself,
yeah,
or someone's going to come in this room right now and do some awful thing, or just like projections, like, and like poor imaginings.
yes, yes, 100% the same, 100% the same.
Before we continue on with today's episode, I'd like to take a moment to tell you a little bit about my very first book, The Golden Key: Modern Alchemy to Unlock Infinite Abundance. The concept for the book initially came to me in a dream and has been followed by a next level amount of synchronicity, confirming for me that the information in the book is pertinent to get to the world at this moment in our collective evolution. In the book, I share the 8 keys to manifesting abundance that I've personally discovered over 25 years of trial, error, and deep exploration, including one golden key that ultimately ties them all together. I think most of you will agree with me that talk is a bit cheap, especially these days, and results speak the loudest of all. Well, these keys have led me to manifesting incredible results, such as an Inc. fastest growing private company, uncanny health, incredible relationships, and success with this podcast. However, I'm not any more special than you, and anyone can apply this information to achieve incredible results in their own life. I also believe waking up our planet by sharing these keys to abundance is the quickest way to help us to transition our home into the planet of paradise it is destined to become. which is why I'd like to gift the book to you at goldenkey.gift when you use the golden key code POSITIVEHEAD. I would also like to invite you to create your own unique golden key code so you in turn can gift the book to others, as well as invite you to participate in a unique abundance manifestation game with me and the other readers that is outlined in detail at the end of the book and on the website, where readers are also going to share the inspiring results of their abundance manifestation experiments. Lastly, I'm going to practice what I preach by sharing 50% of the abundance generated from the golden game and sale of the other golden goodies on the website with you and all the other readers. So if you're ready to alchemize the circumstances in your life so that your abundance expands to an entirely new level, head over to goldenkey.gift to download the audio or ebook as my gift to you by using the code POSITIVEHEAD. Also, if you end up loving and appreciating your gifted copy of the book, please take a moment to go to Amazon and give it a review, which will greatly help me reach and unlock more hearts with the golden key.
But there was like a calmness to it of like almost, and that's why I say it was almost like a higher self, because it almost felt like an implicit trust, like a family member or possibly even yourself who has been through it already. Like it's almost like you from another perspective reminding you that, hey, this stuff you're worried about, this place you are in your life, don't worry about it. But at the same time, capitalize, my friend. Please capitalize. Please don't be afraid of failure. Please don't worry about bad circumstances, because it is illusory. And what matters is that you take advantage of this life. You live the life, you do the dance, you love, it's all the cliche stuff.
Yep.
But in the moment when you're feeling it, it's so powerful. It's so powerful.
It's like it's real. And for me, I'm curious if this is your experience to any degree, but it feels like, and it felt like, and of course you always hear about people with Aya, they're processing things that maybe are ancestral, or even having experiences where they, see other lifetimes or their grandmother and realizing she carried this thing and it's passed on to them. So my mother has always been like very fearful of something happening to her kids or grandkids, and just like over the top that way. And so for me, it felt like a lot of these fears are like really deep rooted within me. And it's like, because on my day to day, very, not under the influence life, I'm not a very fearful person, at all. And just very trusting of, life. And so when all these things come up, they feel very deep rooted. And it also felt to me sort of like, it was like, okay, I've heard it said that a lot of times you'll process things in the dream state so that you don't have to process it in waking reality. And so for me, I was very much a sense of, okay, I'm experiencing all this dark stuff and going through it, and even learning to like bring love and acceptance to it by my sixth journey. And it felt like, okay, I just processed I did a lot of work. I processed a lot of fear and darkness and all the shadow stuff, so that I don't actually have to experience it, manifested fully in a 3D environment. That was a sense for me. So I'm curious if that was something that you felt on any level.
Yeah. The ancestral or maybe epigenetic part of it is an interesting thing, because the short answer is, of course, I don't know. And I think that is a tool that can be useful to help people understand that, you're coming off a tree of being, right? Like that's actually a really, really well-formed experience I had on my heaviest psilocybin trip ever, was the feeling of, you're a human, you're walking around, you think you're not a plant, but let me tell you, you're a
Mm-hmm.
plant. You came out
Mm-hmm.
of the dirt, you came out of the mycelium, you came out of the forests, and there was a very palpable feeling of connection. And like, my family is this branch, and I am preceded by the one that came before and the one that came before. And it's impossible for me not to feel like those things that came before must have a pretty large invisible impression. Like, there must be something there. So I think that that's very plausible. I think that that
Yeah.
is very, very plausible, that we might all be, you know, that maybe what it costs in exchange for coming here and getting a chance is a certain amount of pre-existing psychic momentum or something, that it's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you can come here, but you got to kind of deal with a lot of stuff that you might not be equipped to process or even know that you need to process. And I think your point about needing to do that shadow work is just so important, because people want to have, that part of the hero's journey where they like slay the dragon and get the treasure, or they get the knowledge, or they ascend or whatever. But all of the pre-work is done in the gutter. It's like all
Right.
of that.
Totally.
It's all done
Totally.
in the darkness. It doesn't come until you um acknowledge that, eh, like, okay, let's say, for example, that if we're carrying the momentum of our ancestors and your ancestor did some terrible thing,
Mm-hmm.
there's something somewhere probably in your subconscious that's holding on to that, and needs to acknowledge that not only did that come before me, I, to a weird extent, am still working out
Mm-hmm.
how to account for that and understand that the very same genetic information that birthed me was capable of that.
Mm.
Therefore, I am capable of that in some permutation of reality. And I need to accept that and understand that I could be terrible,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
part of a huge part, I think, of psychological and spiritual growth, is
Mm-hmm.
acknowledging those things.
Yeah, you said it very well. I love the way you just explained it, and I think back to I forget who was telling me this sometime in the last few years, but they were telling me about their own journey. And I believe it was with plant medicine. And they were going along and they were like looking and they were in a hallway and looking in all these different rooms that were like other thems, other lifetimes, and then it was like, there comes a room where it's like, oh, yeah, this one, I don't know if you're ready to accept yet and see yet, about yourself. And he
Yeah.
proceeded to peek in, and it was just like dark shit, like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
really like, oh my gosh, I'm capable of this. But you take the whole idea of, you know, the higher the branches, the deeper the roots. It's like this,
Yeah.
one needing the other in order to create the contrast and balance. And I think it's a really important piece for people to get, and one that obviously there's a lot of controversy around, um, in the transformational community, and this idea it's all love and light and whatnot, and
Yeah.
it's really just
No.
not what's
No.
going on. That's
No,
what
man.
all the darkness makes the love and light have meaning, and is the opportunity for it to exist. So it's actually happening ultimately, I believe, for a very for love in the end. But you get
Yeah.
into like the relative truth of a shadow experience, and that some pretty can get pretty dark.
Mhm. Yes, man. Yes. And this is why I love Carl Jung so much, because and I mean, on the point you just made, there's that heavily used quote, but it doesn't make it any less great, about that for a tree to reach to heaven, the roots have to reach down to hell.
Right.
That's the truth, man. And that's why I also love the language he used around individuation, around his kind of greater process of what he called the work, or
Mm-hmm.
become the higher. I don't think he even often used the word higher self, because for him he would always emphasize that it's about wholeness, It's
Mm-hmm.
not about like overcoming the dark. It's about processing,
Integrating.
contextualizing. 100%. There's the word,
Yep.
integrating the work, and that's hard for people to swallow, man, because they don't
Yep.
want to admit that's an important part of them. But I'll tell you, man, a, a distillation of that whole experience for me was coming out on the other end of all of that torment with immense gratitude
Yep.
for, like I said, the everyday, but also the experience of being able to touch that kind of rock bottom and come back out of it. Because
Yeah.
if you just get to the top of the mountain, or you have some kind of, Disney-esque victory over the
Right.
bad guy, and you're the hero and the king now, and yay, right off into the sunset, that is nowhere near as powerful as understanding what the true bottom is and what the true top is and what balance is. There's no one wants to be in that dark moment when they're there. No one wants to. But I
Yeah.
think everyone would be that much more grateful for that struggle on the other side of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's you're talking about, you know, the hot pocket experience, as I call it now. My brother, I've told this story. It seems like more lately. He's the most sensitive person I know, like hands down. He's a Cancer. Like just how his karmic path to have me as his older brother. Especially the much more immature version of me. Very Leo-ish and older, and this poor sensitive soul. No, we're close to this day, but he definitely endured quite a bit, and so I think back to when he was in his very early 20s. He didn't pay a ticket or something, and then years later it caught up with him, and then they ended up putting him in jail over it, and it was like this extreme kind of scenario where. Yeah, he had. I think. Oh, I'm remembering now. He had been on at a little beach bonfire thing, and got a ticket for having. They had alcohol, beer or something, and he got a ticket, and they never paid that ticket. And then years later, he gets pulled over or something, and there's a warrant. He didn't know because he never took care of this thing, and so they throw him in jail for like days. And I remember picking him up at midnight after however many 4 days, whatever he was in jail, and I made him a hot pocket at like 1 a.m. After picking him up. They let him out at midnight, 12:01, so they can get another day's pay, for him being there. And to this day, he says that was the best meal he ever had. And, he had been in this, just to him, especially as sensitive as he is, just this horrific environment. And so it's the hot pocket, the best meal he ever had. Same kind of thing. You mentioned it earlier. You're like, you came out and like, oh my gosh, this is the thing I've been taking for granted. This is wonderful. Like compared to where I was just at. So it's really interesting.
I love that, man. I love that. I love the understanding that a hot pocket can turn into like a sacred object under the right circumstances. That's what it's about, man. That again,
Yep.
it's context, man. It's
Yep.
context.
Absolutely.
Oh,
So what happened night 4?
Well, I'll be honest, because night 3 was such a huge peak, I was advised to take it easy or risk, starting to meander back into territory that would require a lot more unpacking. So I took it easy nights 4 and 5. But those in and of themselves were really interesting too, to be in that room and drinking a sort of, really small dose, while other people were still going through it and having just huge processing trauma and all of these just massive, psychic megaton experiences they were having. It was interesting being in the room, and also the collective temperament of the room shifted so much between the nervousness of night 1 and the community of nights 4 and 5, that there
Sure.
was just a much lighter general vibe to the whole experience.
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
yelling things out and people laughing a lot more. And, if somebody has a questionable sounding fart, there's a lot of, oh, kind of like commentary and stuff like that. So it was still a really valuable experience, and it allowed me to kind of soak in the you're so in your, I mean, it's the word psychedelic means mind manifesting. So when you're
Mm,
having those experiences, you are very much, you're aware of what's going on in the room, but you're so much more hooked into your own mind. And it was nice to be able to have those last 2 nights to also take in the experience of
mhm.
Icaros, the people, the smells, the sounds of the jungle, all of those things that hopefully I was able to uh, create some synaptic connections around or memories around a little bit better. So those last couple of nights were great for that, but I did not go heavy in
Mm.
nights 4 or 5. I'll be honest with you.
Well, that's probably for the best. Obviously, it's what happened, so it's perfect. Um,
Yeah.
did you you found yourself having like um, any sort of symptoms from it, or was it so mild that you were just sort of in a very calm, cool, collected state?
It's actually hard to say because it's so the whole space is so mind altering in and of
Yep.
itself.
Right.
I assume when you did it, you were in pretty much total darkness, and the Icaros are going on, and it's just there's definitely again some kind of, I don't know if Kairos, that kind of increased time gravity is the right word, but it almost feels like you're in a manufactured field of whatever that Kairos is, or something
Yeah.
more, that like I said before, that suchness, that muchness, that I don't know what this is, but I feel it kind of like the vibration coming off of it or something.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, you definitely, I think, would feel something on the natch completely in that space for sure.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to say. It's kind of
Yeah.
hard to say.
Will you ever do it again?
That is a good question. I am still definitely like, and I've had some people tell me since then, who have looked at, because they, the place I went, Blue Morpho, which unfortunately they're not existing in the same form as they were
Oh
post
well.
COVID now.
Hmm.
But they have a crazy, crazy brew with like dozens of ingredients in it. And for people listening, traditionally, though there can be many additives, you only really need two
Mm-hmm.
ingredients. You need the
Right.
ayahuasca root, or the ayahuasca vine, and the chacruna leaf. One is the MAOI that allows the DMT to be orally active. The leaf contains the DMT. So all you need to do is mix those together. But
Mm-hmm.
different groups have like different brews, and it's like a big recipe and this is our secret ingredient, and this is when you use these all together, you're getting these synergistic effects. And
Right.
so
Right.
maybe part of why I struggled was that, or maybe not. I don't know. I don't know. So
Yeah.
I would say never, but I almost still feel like I'm processing, or maybe have some
Right.
fear there, which maybe that would be a reason to do it. Maybe if I have
Yeah.
fear around it, that means I need to do it
Well,
again.
what's so fascinating is you could do it another time and it'd be completely different. Like, just this, I'm sure there were people there that you saw who were having just like incredible blissed out,
Hmm.
you know, multidimensional, you name it. It probably happened if it was a big group. You probably saw every type of experience there could be.
And not to mention people who are physically smaller than me. So I'm sort of a middle, right in the middle. I'm like a 5'11", 170-pound dude. And
Mm-hmm.
there would be women there, s- smaller than me by quite a bit, who are like having almost no effect.
Yeah.
Like they would drink 2 to 3 times the amount I drank, and they'd be like, "I don't know, nothing's happening."
Wow.
So or they're only purging or something like that, and they're not getting any psychoactive effects. So yeah, they absolutely do run the gamut. The effects are very mysterious in that way of just how they work on people's neurology, their mind, their soul, whatever is all in play. It does
Yep.
seem somewhat mysterious to me.
Yeah, yeah. You definitely can't say, okay, here's what's gonna happen for sure. Like, I think that's part of it for people going in, and why there's the nervousness. Like, I don't know where I'm about to go, but I'm going.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And that was something that I am still reflecting on, that I'm still struggling with trying to reflect through writing, is how can we, not the dosage, but how can we understand the value of struggle in a way that feeds the larger mystery of being alive?
Mm.
Because we're all so conditioned to desire comfort,
Hmm.
value comfort, and avoid discomfort and struggle completely. I mean, where are you sitting on a cushion right now? Because I am. Are you sitting
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
in a climate controlled room right now?
Yep.
Because I am. Are
Yep.
you like eating just because it's like you're just kind of walking around and you're bored? Because I certainly do.
Yep.
And I know we all do these things, but I have found, and I think that there's a tremendous growing pile of both scientific and psychological and spiritual evidence to back this point up, that you are not in even close to your ideal form if you haven't pushed yourself in some way, and probably in a multitude of ways. And I think
Mm.
that we have to understand that, you know like something physical, let's say, like doing something physically difficult, that
Hmm.
usually is not thought of as a spiritual thing.
Yeah.
But if you look back at Native American cultures, they would do like ordeal initiations, like the Navajo people would do prayer runs where they would run, really long distances as like a prayer to the earth, or they would do um just crazy ordeal initiations where they would like, this wasn't the Navajo, but this is a different tribe, I believe, called the Mandan tribe, where they would do these
Hmm.
physical horrific initiation rites where they would like pierce their bodies and make themselves pass out and get dragged around and all of these things. And we look at this, and if you saw that, you would be like, this does not look spiritual to me. This
Right. Right.
looks horrific,
Right.
whatever this is. And yeah, it's not something I want to go through. But if we dig deeper into why, into what they're experiencing, into what that shows them about the border between life and death, how much it probably lightens up the everyday and the things that typically cause worry and anxiety, they're living in a whole different level of understanding of their bodies and their limits and their minds than we are. And I
Yeah.
think being disconnected from that is something that should give all of us a lot of pause, and we should be asking, what are some things that we could do to introduce a modicum of that back into our
Mm.
lives? So
Mm.
that's something I've been thinking a lot about.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I've just someone here who lives here at the Mystic Manor is in Kundalini training,
Mm.
and I was in a band for many years called Kundalini, and I've done it here or there, but I was never. People are always like, "Oh, are you really big into it?" I'm like, "No, I just like the name." This is like 20
Yeah.
years ago, and so I'm like, okay, I might as well. Maybe it's time to stop being a poser and actually do Kundalini. Say for the last few days, she has like a 10-day thing set out, and several of us are participating as part of her, certification and practicing teaching on others. And so it's funny that you mentioned that, because fresh off of, an hour plus with her coming into this conversation, it's like my legs are like really aching and sore. And, it was a great way to like push yourself some of these exercises without, obviously needing to be drug around behind a pickup truck or anything like that. Not super extreme, but
Right,
something like yoga is such a great example of, okay, it's accessible to everyone, even if it's locally or,
yeah.
a video or whatever. And it's just a really great way. I mean, there are times, 7.5 minutes of, lifting your legs from the ground to your head with your arms stretched out. By minute 3, you're like, hold on, there's 4 more. Like it's challenging. And then, but on the other side of it, there's this great achievement feeling and benefit and rejuvenation. And so it's really interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so much evidence to show that, some level of this challenge or struggle is really beneficial.
Have you heard of the hormetic effect or the hormetic response?
I don't know. I don't think I have.
So it's this biological term where essentially an organism is exposed to an acute stressor.
Mm-hmm.
So, this could happen in nature in any multitude of ways you can possibly imagine.
Mm-hmm.
But then what happens to that organism that experiences that stressful stimulus is they kick off a stress response in their body where maybe, they release some hormones or some heat shock or cold shock proteins kick off, or, these kind of dynorphic neurotransmitters start flooding through the body, and that would be like the opposite of endorphins, things that make you feel good. And in that process, while it is acutely very uncomfortable, potentially painful, you come out on the other side of that process with an almost internally generated pharmacological response that leads to, it's not an illusion, like a runner's high, for example, or like what you feel on the other side of an ice bath, or like how you feel on the other side of a hot yoga session or something. It's like, it's the hot pocket effect again, man, because
Right.
it's like in the same way that a hot pocket can be sacred, that very same couch that has been causing you to spiral into a Netflix binge, potato chip eating, self-hating portal or something, that could be the sacred object on the other side of a really difficult thing. And that's what I'm getting at, and that's what you're hinting at too, I think, is that we have to fool ourselves. We have to fool ourselves into being willing to struggle so that we can appreciate life more, our health more, our potential more. And I think I totally agree that I think yoga is a great way to do it, especially hot yoga, man. Because you want to get to that point where you're like, I can't do this. I think I have to get out of the room. And then you don't. It's like that's the point, that point that you think that you're dreading is actually, you want to get as close to that as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hot yoga is no joke.
No,
No joke at all. Enough to make me hiccup.
Yeah. Just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Just thinking about oh God. Yeah. Yeah. I remember the first time I went to, back when they still called it Bikram. I remember the first time I went to a Bikram class, and I got, maybe halfway through, and that panic of I can't do this started setting in. And then there's just finally a part of me like, I don't care what I have to do, even if I just have to
pass the limit.
lay down. And then, and man, it is no joke, but it truly is, on the other side of it, a fabulous thing to show yourself that you're capable of something like that.
Yeah, it's like your capacity to, everything is a reflection of everything, and now your capacity to withstand and deal with, challenges, I think is reflected in, and it's such a power up move to push yourself past your limitations and find out there's a whole nother. And a lot of times then you find that, on the other side of that breaking point, like a whole new, reservoir of energy and depth that you didn't, you didn't even know was there. And now all of a sudden because you've been there, it's there, and you can can access it. It's really, really interesting.
Yeah, and I haven't even gotten to this point. I'll be completely honest, and I don't know if I ever will, because I think you need to. It's gonna sound so grandiose, but I think you need to get in this like frame of mind where you're almost willing to die or something to get to this place. But I interviewed this guy on my podcast like maybe a year and a half ago now. His
Hmm.
name's Sanjay Rawal, and he's
Hmm.
a filmmaker. And he made a film about this 3,100-mile race where these guys run 3,100 miles over the course of, I think it might be 50 or 60 days.
Wow.
And to do that, you have to run like 2 or 3 marathons worth of miles a day.
Oh my God.
And he's explaining the sort of frame of mind that you have to be able to get into to do this. And it makes complete sense because the guy who's the world record holder who typically wins the race is essentially like a monk.
Mm.
Like he's an adept of this now dead yogi who actually founded the race. And his whole ethos was kind of what we're talking about. It's this ability of it's this thought of like you can give yourself over to the transcendent through practices like this, through these sort of ordeal practices. And
Hmm.
like I said, I'm not aspiring to do this. I know that I'm never going to run 3,100 miles, but I think it speaks to, just like maybe you don't need you don't need to go eat the spiciest pepper in the world, but
Right.
a dash of spice, a
Yeah. Yeah.
dash of spice is just supremely important to
I'll run.
everyone's
I'll
culinary.
run
Yeah,
all the way to the cupboard to get those potato chips. You know what I mean?
you're right. Yeah, yeah, man. Yeah, man. Have you dabbled with cold exposure at all?
Very little, actually. Recently, though, because we have a pool here, and it's not cold, not like ice bath cold. I haven't done that yet, but it's it's I don't know, probably 50s, 60 degrees or something. And so someone was here visiting a couple weeks ago and convinced me to get in and stay in. And it's really the first time I'd done that as someone who is very much seeks comfort and coziness. And,
Yeah.
it's like, hell, let's get out of the hot tub and come sit in here for a few minutes. And it was really great. It actually made me, I'd never been that attracted to the idea of, ice bath or any of that super cold exposure stuff. But it was really cool because, of course, at first it was so cold, and then just sit with it and sit with it. And after a minute or so, it's like then you get into these states where it's like you actually start feeling a little warm, and it just even that little taste of it for me was like, oh, this was cool. This definitely alters your state too.
Yes, absolutely does. Absolutely does. And that's why I like it, because if you are willing to go cold enough where it is like, cold enough like you're in a legit ice bath or you do a
Mm-hmm.
cryo session or something, you can get that whole hormetic response within like 2 or 3 minutes. And
Yeah.
you go through the whole curvature of the deep suck, like this is just terrible and I can't handle this, and you're just breathing through it and trying to survive. But then you last a minute or two and you come out, and there is a palpable high. There is an undeniable high that you get on
Yeah.
the other side of that experience. And not only do you get that feeling, there's all kinds of evidence to show that it reduces systemic inflammation. It empowers your mitochondria, so the power plants of your cell, they get stronger and more resilient, and then that has a collective effect on your whole immune system, and become more immune to pathogens and illness. And it's a whole feedback loop that's really good for your mind and your body in so many ways. So that's been my preferred method, is like the cold showers and the cold exposure, because it's
Mm-hmm.
for one, truly it is just the shortest way I've found to get
Yeah.
those benefits.
Yeah. So do you do that do it regularly or?
I do, yeah. Like luckily the showers get luckily slash unfortunately, the showers get brutally cold up here.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's every day. I mean, people sometimes say it gets easier. I don't know if it gets easier or you just get habituated to the fact that you're gonna do it, because every
Yeah.
day I'm like, oh, here we
Here we
go.
go.
Yeah.
How
But
long do you stay under?
uh I've been slacking a little bit lately, but you can really start small. You can really start small and just resolve. So this is how I would advise people to get started if they're interested, is just, take your normal shower, and then right at the end, sort of take a moment and just say, I'm going to turn the dial to cold, and I'm going to keep breathing regularly. I'm not going to clench up. I'm not going to freak out. And I'm just going to stay here for X amount of seconds, no matter what. And you just
Mm.
start with like 10, 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And then you gradually move up to 30, gradually move up to a minute. And then from there, I find that once you can hit a minute, you can sort of hit this new point of, I'm not comfortable, but I'm aware enough and calm enough that I can just kind of maintain, and it's not getting any worse.
Yeah.
And you could just kind of, once you get to that point, I think the sky is almost the limit for however long you want to last. So
Yeah.
I try to do a minute or two, but you can certainly go much longer. You can certainly go much longer than that.
Interesting. Well, I will have to yeah, I haven't really done the shower thing here, although my partner has complained that it's not cold enough here because she was in the habit of doing that as well. So maybe that's perfect for me, and I'll check it out as like the soft step. But with the pool right there, it makes it pretty, and with the hot tub right next to it, it makes it a little bit easier because it's like you've got that as your reward afterwards. So
yeah, you guys have such a great setup there. There's got to be a spot where you can just sort of set up I don't know, like some kind of frigid wonder zone, where I've seen people get those like those freezers, those chest freezers. And there's videos online of how people convert them into cold baths.
wow.
It'd be awesome if you did that.
Wow. Well, Michael, this has been awesome as always. You are never dull. You always have such fun stories and interesting perspectives. I know there's listeners out there who are just hearing you for the first time and wanting to connect. So maybe take a moment and, of course, the podcast. What is the best ways for people to connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, Third Eye Drops is on all of your typical podcast outlets. thirdeyedrops.com is a website, and it is some variation of Third Eye Drops on all the social medias. And I mean, yeah, you kind of know. I mean, I don't think we're exactly like Positive Head, but we do weekly wonder dips on all of these topics and more. So I'm always, of course, happy to get more Diginauts in the zone. Hope you'll come hang out. Yeah. And I'm grateful to be back, man. It's a lot of fun, and I can't wait to have you back on the show.
Yeah, dude, you're always it's so cool to connect with you. Definitely I definitely see and feel some of myself in you always, and it's just like never, like I said, never dull to connect and share. And I look forward to coming back on Third Eye Drops, and also having you here sometime, as we come out of the COVID chrysalis. And you said you're going to be doing some adventuring. So definitely keep it on the radar.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's get weird, and let's get some cold wonder dips going, and we can get in the warm pool afterward.
Done. I'm in.
All right, man. All right.
I do have one final question for you.
Yeah.
So my cliche final question. In 60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life according to Michael Phillip?
I think that we haven't touched on this too much, but I think that there are so many forces in life compelling us to be on a certain path And whether by design or by accident, those forces prevent you from figuring out what your personal path truly is. And I don't know how well defined that path is, but I've been extremely turned on by the work of this psychologist named James Hillman.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find more about this in the book Soul's Code. But he remixes this Platonic myth called the myth of And I won't get into it because you said 60 seconds or less. But the bottom line is that when we come to this place, at least according to this myth, when we come to this planet, there is a sort of unseen, what the Greeks called paradigma attached to our soul. And he likens this to how the acorn holds the potential for the oak tree. Your soul houses some kind of innate potential.
Yeah.
But to discover what that potential is, you're going to have to get off of that path. You're going to have to get off of the comfortable path.
Yep.
So my hope for everyone is that they take some time to leave the comfortable, leave the familiar, and just sacrifice to trying to understand what that acorn is and what that oak tree is for them.
Yes. I love that there's a great synchronicity there, because I literally just talked about the acorn and the oak tree on yesterday's episode or a couple days ago. So I am so into it, and creating the right conditions for it to emerge. It's like not this thing you got to find that's outside of yourself. It's about creating the conditions so that it can blossom. And that really circles back to what we were talking about even before we were recording. It's happening for all of us as long as we create the right conditions for that. And so, yeah, very, very cool. You never disappoint, Michael. I appreciate you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom and wonder. And all of you out there listening, until next time, journey well.
Likewise, man. Thanks again for having me, and looking forward to the next Third Eye Drops Wonder Dip.
Indeed. Also, quickly, before we sign off, I wanted to remind you to download the Golden Key, audio or ebook, as my free gift to you at goldenkey.gift using the code POSITIVEHEAD. I also wanted to remind you that I will now be doing a live Q&A every Thursday night at 6 p.m. Pacific time on the new social audio app Clubhouse. I have really been wanting to connect and interact with all of you more for quite some time, and I'm super excited to now have 2 new ways to do it. First, if you're already on Clubhouse, be sure to follow me and click the little bell on my profile and select to always be notified when I go live on the Clubhouse app. And if you'd like to connect on an even more intimate Zoom gathering once a month, now you can do that too by registering at goldenkey.gift.